Captain Marcus Thorne's breath formed crystalline clouds in the frigid air as he approached the anomaly. Through the reinforced visor of his environmental suit, the vessel appeared to be a relic from humanity's early expansion period, its hull design consistent with colony ships from the 23rd century. Yet according to his scanner readings, it had been embedded in this ice shelf for at least 400 years. The contradiction that had drawn him across 3 star systems lay in the thermal signature emanating from the ship's rear section. While the forward compartments registered at absolute zero, the engine bay glowed with active heat signatures on his instruments. "Impossible," he muttered, his voice echoing within his helmet's confines. Thorne had spent the better part of 2 decades exploring derelict vessels scattered across the Outer Rim territories. Most were picked clean by scavengers or reduced to frozen tombs by the unforgiving vacuum of space. This one, however, had crash-landed on Kepler 442c during its last ice age, becoming a monument preserved in permafrost. He activated his plasma cutter and began carving through the ice surrounding the airlock. The ancient metal groaned as thermal expansion fought against centuries of compression. When the seal finally gave way, Thorne was surprised to find atmosphere rushing out, thin, but breathable according to his suit's analysis. The corridors inside were a study in contrasts. Forward sections showed clear signs of impact damage and long-term exposure to sub-zero temperatures. Frost covered every surface, and his footsteps echoed hollowly through passages that hadn't heard human voices in 4 centuries. Yet as he moved aft toward the engine compartment, the temperature gradually increased. In the ship's central hub, Thorne discovered the crew manifest displayed on a still-functioning holographic terminal. The UES Pioneer had carried 12,000 colonists toward what was then the frontier world of New Geneva. Captain Elizabeth Reeves had been in command, with Chief Engineer David Kumar overseeing the revolutionary new quantum cascade drives. But it was the engineering logs that made Thorne's blood run cold. The entries described an experimental modification to the ship's power core, an attempt to create a closed temporal loop within the engine compartment. Kumar's theory was that by creating a localized time dilation field, they could achieve near-instantaneous acceleration without subjecting the crew to lethal G-forces. The final entry, dated 3 days before the crash, was a single line, temporal field stabilized. Engine compartment now exists in a 0.3-second recurring loop. God help us all. Thorne's hands trembled as he accessed the ship's internal sensors. The forward sections showed expected entropy, for centuries of molecular decay and thermal degradation. But the engine bay registered as existing in a constant state of temporal flux, its matter cycling through the same fraction of a second endlessly. He made his way to the engineering deck, finding the massive blast doors that separated the engine compartment from the rest of the ship. Through the reinforced viewport, he could see the quantum cascade drives humming with activity, their blue radiance pulsing in perfect rhythm. Chief Engineer Kumar stood at the central console, his hands frozen mid-gesture as he reached for an emergency shutdown switch he would never quite touch. The temporal field had trapped not just the engines, but Kumar himself, in an endless moment of desperate action. For 400 years, he had been caught in the act of trying to save his ship, reliving the same 0.3 seconds of mounting horror as the drive spun out of control. Thorne studied the field generator controls from outside the contaminated zone. The mathematics were elegant in their complexity, a standing wave in spacetime itself, powered by the very engines it was meant to regulate. The system was completely self-sustaining, drawing energy from its own temporal distortions. As he prepared to leave, Thorne noticed something that made his breath catch. The engineering logs were still updating, timestamp by timestamp, as Kumar's consciousness experienced the same moment over and over again. Somewhere in that frozen instant, a brilliant mind was trapped, aware of its predicament but powerless to break free. Thorne sealed the ship and returned to his vessel, carrying with him the knowledge that some frontiers of science were better left unexplored. The Pioneer would remain entombed in ice, its engines warm with the echoes of a moment that would never end.